Welcome to a special edition of the Commissioner's Corner. I'm so excited. We're taking a little detour from the student athlete route this week, and I have a very special guest for us. Please meet Miss Erica Ayala. Erica is a freelance sports journalist who specializes in women's hockey, also women's basketball, women's soccer, and she's headed to the Olympics. And there's so many things that I want to talk to Erica about. So I'm thrilled that she's joining me, and we're just gonna go for it. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So when we first met, we were talking about our journeys into hockey, because I also took a pretty non-traditional path to this amazing sport, but so did you. So I'm curious if you'll tell our viewers a little bit about why hockey has become such a passion for you and how that happened.
Sure thing. Well, first, I definitely have to say thank you so much for having me on. This is so exciting. And yes, non-traditional route. It was funny when you were saying we're going away from the student athlete route. And I was like, well, I was a student athlete back in the day. I just never played ice hockey. But so that kind of fits into the story though. I was a massive sports fan growing up. I still am a massive sports fan growing up. And my family was always like, yeah, Erica, that's awesome. That's what you like to do. We don't like to do those sports things though. So it was very rare that I could get, certainly not my whole family. I have two sisters, and we were pretty much raised by our mom, and I could get maybe one person from the family and maybe sometimes my dad and some other people to come to a game, but never like a group of us. That was never a thing. So flash forward to 2014, and one of my younger sisters, Jessie, really got into the ice hockey tournaments at the Winter Olympics. Now, watching the Olympics, like I'm sure a lot of people, always a big family thing. We would watch figure skating or speed skating together, but Jessie got really into Olympic hockey. We were talking she really loved Julie Chu, but there were so many amazing people on that team. And she watched the men's tournament as well. And that was a pretty exciting Olympics for hockey. Drama all over. I don't want to, however you land, it was exciting and drama filled. I think we can all agree on that. So when I found out she, the most least athletic out of all of us, by a lot, got into this
bus right now.
She would say the same. She's like,
okay,
you're absolutely right. That is accurate, Erica. 100%. And so I was like, whoa, she got into this really physical sport of hockey. So I was like, okay, now is my time. This is when big sis comes in. I'm going to teach you how to do the sports things. We're going to know the teams. We're going to know the players. We're going to do all of the things. And so that then led to finding out that there was a women's hockey league that was going to start. And there was going to be a team in essentially our home city of New York City. They did not realize they're going to play all the way out in Brooklyn, but we went to the first game, the first Riveters home game as fans. And we just got tickets for that one game. And Hillary Knight is on the ice, Bree Decker, Madison Packer, Brooke Ammerman. Just all of these players, and also someone by the name of Blake Bolden. And I recognized number 10 gold. And I knew enough about hockey to know what a slap shot was. And also I'm a big defense first person. So I knew that as a defender, you would have to every once in a while, or as a player playing defense, you'd have to block a shot. So I'm seeing these shots just wham. And Blake's shot really stood out to me. And I was like, yo, the Riveters have to block that? That seems like a not great thing to have to sign up to do. I was like, I don't know about number 10. Gold, I don't want none of that. No smoke, none of it. And then I looked a little closer because I didn't know these players at all. Jessie knew some of them obviously because she'd watched some of them play in the Olympics. And then I'm looking on the ice, and I was like, oh, I think Blake is black. I think Blake Bolden is black. And so that just really piqued my interest, because like a lot of people probably, I had some assumptions about hockey, and Black women in particular playing hockey. wasn't at the top of some of the things that I expected to see. And so wrapping all of that up, what I love to say when I'm asked this question is that Black women, starting with my sister and then continuing on with Blake Bolden and, you know, Cherie Stewart, who played for the Riveters that year, and then just on and on and on, Megan Guetas, a woman of color, I mean, Nina Rogers, we just got to catch up with, that those are the people that kept me excited about hockey. And now here I am getting ready to go to the Olympics.
Well, it's a beautiful segue, because certainly there's a lot happening in the sport of hockey around players of color or people of color, however they're connected to the game. And for you, as a woman of color who is working in hockey and who loves hockey, how are you feeling about everything? And how do you feel when you hear the phrase hockey is for everyone? What happens to you when you hear that?
Yeah, it's one of those things, you know, and there's different versions of that kind of, what I would say is an aspirational kind of mantra and slogan. There's a lot of those things, like, you know, if you talk to people who are in college or have gone through the college process and they're like, it's multicultural weekend, or this is hosted by the multicultural alumni. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. That's amazing. And then you start thinking about it. And then you're like, oh, I mean, it is cool. And I am that, but like, do I want to be on in that way at this time? Can I just kind of learn about this environment on my own before we start like categorizing it? It's conflicting at times. I can speak for myself. I find it conflicting because I am very proud of who I am as a Black Latina. I own it. I mean, I'm wearing my Black Rosie shirt today.
You're looking good.
Thank you. You know, I own that. That is who I am. It's a part of my family history. And, you know, if not for that, I would not be who I am. So I own that and I embrace that. That being said, because of some of the things that we're seeing, certainly in the hockey community, and of course, throughout this country and the world, you don't know if you're entering spaces where that can open you up to everything from conversations or microaggressions to even more violent things. Mm-hmm. And so you want to own who you are and be excited about who you are and bringing your full self. And there are times when you've just been conditioned because of what you've seen, what you've experienced, to know that there's a little bit of a guardedness. And even if it's not that discomfort at that type of level, we also know that when we see things that are catered towards Black communities, the Latine community, even the language that's used. I mean, I use Latine and not Latinx, just as an example. That's a personal decision that I make. Those things are sometimes through a lens that you might not see yourself through. Mm-hmm. And so it's really exciting to see people take on diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I honor that work. We were just at a conference where they did that. And there are times where you just have to take a moment to take a deep breath and just prepare yourself. Mm-hmm. More often than not, I can come in my full fun self, just like this conversation we're having. But I'm aware that there might be something that's said when I'm in a space where, you know, I'm not just in my group chat with my friends, and something might be said that will upset me, that will throw me off guard, and I have to find ways to navigate through that. So there can be a lot of, you know, anxiety, quite honestly, around some of those things. But when I think of Hockey is for Everyone, and I think about my origin story, again, I think of it as an aspirational thing. And yeah, of course, hockey is for everyone. I also think about, we talk about hockey and young people in hockey and how it's great to, you know, if you can see it, be it. I had no dreams ever of being a professional hockey player, and I still fell in love with this game. You know, we talk about, you know, the idea of like a rink rat. I joke around, I became a rink rat at 29 years old. Like, you know what I'm saying? So hockey is for everyone. And it's something that I said at that conference. It is for everyone. And we really want to say it with our whole chest when we say that, because it's for everyone at every stage of their life.
Right.
And that's been my experience from people who are in the hockey community and the hockey loving community. And so that's what I hang on to. That's what I hear first. That's what I feel first, you know, like those imprinted emotions that I have about hockey. And as I learn, I know that it's not always that for everyone. Not everyone has that really cool sister moment, and then getting to see, you know, Olympians on the ice and then having that connection with Blake Bolden. That's not everyone's experience. And so I'm very blessed and honored and appreciative of my experience, while also holding space to know that not everyone has had that or has those positive interactions at all times.
It's interesting. I mean, you referenced us being together last week at the Carnegie Initiative in Boston, and there is so much work being done in the sport of hockey around DEI, around diversity, around inclusion, around equity, education, all of those things. And yet we leave that event feeling probably on a bit of a high. We're around people who are thinking the same as we are, who have the same aspirations around that statement, who have the same goals for making hockey just as awesome for the person next door as it is for the person 200 miles away, right? And then there's incidents that happen within the same week that just remind you of how far we have to go. And I look at my own league and I look at the makeup of our league, and, you know, again, I came into hockey not as a hockey person, if you will, and certainly I'm one of the only females in a space in this type of role in hockey. And so we constantly sort of face those reminders that yes, I can be me, and yes, I can keep working hard and dreaming big and wanting more for our sport. But I also have to remember the reality, right? It's not the same reality for everyone. And that's what I think I appreciate the most about you, is because your love and passion for it is never going to change, but you're also very real. Like, this is a real thing that we're trying to do right now. This is a real challenge to make everyone love and feel good about our sport the way that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well said. And you know who I think really brought that home in the past handful of days is PK Subban, and actually talking about his brother, who unfortunately experienced an incident in the ECHL. And you know, PK took some time to answer questions from the media, and he was very gracious with his time. And but what he said is, you know, similar to what I was saying, you know, he's been very lucky, and you know, he's PK Subban, you know, people know his name, people know his family story.
Right.
And he held so much space in sharing the reflections of his family and his individual story to also say, and people just like me experience this in a very different way outside of the hockey space. And if it's happening to someone like me, who's utilizing a lot of my voice and the celebrity attached to me because I have this platform in hockey, if I have all of that and I'm focused on this and I'm still facing racism,
right,
how we have to think about that in the context of people who aren't me, including his brother to some extent, and who won't have reporters for the next handful of days asking these questions so that we can have a dialogue. And that's exactly what's needed and necessary, is that dialogue.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Work to be done, but there's people like you and I and a lot of other amazing people who are going to continue on that work. Let's switch gears. You're a couple of days, well, actually tomorrow, leaving to start the journey to Beijing to cover the Olympics, which is a phenomenal story in and of itself. Obviously, the journey of your sister watching the Olympics, and that was the start of hockey. So now you're going to go cover the Olympics. Like, living the dream would be a real thing for Erica right now. Definitely living the dream. Tell us a couple things. So tell us a little bit about maybe your assignments while you're there, and maybe just generally about your excitement about covering the Olympics.
Yes, so excited. It's wild to think, but so I'll start with the first part of the question. So I will be headed to the Olympics, as you mentioned at the top. I am a freelance journalist, so that means that I get to write a little bit here, do a little podcasting there, which is what I love. I love being able to be truly a multimedia journalist, and so my coverage will span across a few different places. So your general women's hockey kind of post game wrap up wrap-up reflections will happen at Bleacher Report. So I'm really excited that they've contracted me, and I will write about the men's tournament as well, but they have contracted me to focus on the women's Olympic tournament. So that'll be really exciting. And then I will continue to do some of the podcasts that I have. I have an independent women's hockey podcast, the Founding Four podcast. I also run a podcast that focuses on the Seattle Kraken. So Maddie Beniers, their top draft pick and number 2 overall in the most recent NHL entry draft, will be at the Olympics. So I'll have some of that in podcast form there. And then a really cool project that I'm excited about, and actually just recently spoke with a WCHA alumna in Sarah Nurse, but I will be also doing some coverage for American Legacy Network. They are the company that has partnered with the NHL to do the Black Mobile Museum. This is their 3rd hockey season doing that. We were just here in New York, and I believe the truck is headed to Vegas as we speak for the NHL All-Star weekend. But yeah, so I'll be covering Black hockey players, which is Sarah Nurse for both tournaments, it's looking like, but just Black Olympians overall. So not just in hockey, but that are in Beijing, and sharing and just chronicling some of that history for American Legacy Network.
Are you like pinching yourself? How are you feeling?
I am. We were kind of talking offline, and I referred to a pretty popular show called Grey's Anatomy. And every once in a while they have these really big surgeries, and you'll kind of see like Meredith Grey in particular, and usually one other surgeon, they kind of go off and they kind of had this moment where they're a little sick to their stomach, and then it passes and then they get to work. Yeah. I feel like I'm in that place, like right when you realize like, oh, I'm feeling a little queasy. But as soon as I get through that feeling, everything's going to be fine. It's so exciting. I'm so thankful for all of the people, whether it's been through the contracted work or supporting me in other ways that have made this possible. The hockey community, I learned very early on, is always wrapping their arms around people who are in the hockey loving community. And I've definitely felt that. And I appreciate all of the good vibes. Keep them coming. This obviously, as I don't need to tell you, is such a different time in sports. And we have to be just so careful and cautious, and things can change and turn on a dime because of what we're all dealing with in this global community that we live in. And so wasn't exactly how I drew it up in my head. That being said, it's still an amazing honor. I'm going in with my heart 100% full, and I'm so excited that I get to share stories, and I'm so thankful that we continue to push the needle where there are people that are seeking out people who know the women's game and are making that a primary part of their overall Olympic coverage.
I was literally just going to say the same thing, like how honored we are to have someone who's going to be so focused on our game, because even at the Olympics, where it really is the pinnacle of women's hockey every 4 years, it still doesn't get some of the recognition that at least I think it deserves. So I'm just so grateful that you're going to be there. What do you think? Top 2 storylines of the women's tournament? What would you say?
Wow, so many. It's really tough. I think we have to start with just the basics of the pool expanding. So for those who may not know, it's going to be a 10-team field, and there's so many sub storylines that we will have there. And then I think it's also, the USA is opening with Finland. And again, there's some really interesting storylines. Who is there, who isn't there for both teams. And so I think that those are probably the ones that, just from a broad stroke, people who maybe don't follow the women's game as much as we do can definitely understand. And then of course, there's the intricacies of how Denmark and the Czech Republic even qualified. I mean, Austria was so close, and that was really exciting. The Olympic qualifiers were so exciting. There's we just got an email, there's some new technology that they're going to be incorporating. So that's always something that's pretty exciting at the Olympics overall. And in ice hockey, I think it will mostly be with clock timer and where it's
Okay.
visible and stuff like that. But so yeah, I could literally go on and on, but I think big broad stroke is the expansion of the women's game. We've already seen like little sub bullet under there that it's already getting competitive with those qualifiers. And then of course the opening game that's right before the opening ceremony for the United States, at least, is going to be against Finland. And that has baked into it some really fantastic storylines.
We just hit it right away, right? I mean, that's when we saw the schedule come out, it was like, well, we're just going to go right for it. Here we go.
Let's go.
Let's go. It's only a couple of weeks, right? We got to get to it. But I think
exactly,
it's so crazy because the Olympic bracket expanding, the NCAA bracket expanding for women's hockey, going from 8 teams to 11 teams. Like when you say those things out loud, it's so exciting because that means there's more women's hockey, which for those of us that, you know, are in it, like these women deserve these opportunities. And to know that the qualifiers are competitive, it just means that the sport in general is growing. And so that is a massive positive from my perspective. And as much as things are crazy in the college world in the month of February, there's nothing like the Olympics, and there's nothing like the platform that it gives our sport. And so we're just so thrilled for that. Here's my last question for you. So you strike me clearly as someone who's very passionate about women's sports and who has, you know, figured out how to make her living in that space and to tell those stories. I'm clearly very passionate about women's sports in a little bit of a different way, but very similar in that regard. How do we keep that going? How do we continue to make ways for others who are just as passionate as us to find a space in not just hockey, but in women's sports in general?
Well, first, I think it's conversations like this, right? I mean, I cannot even tell you how honored I was to be invited, you know, like commission quarter. Okay. Like we fancy over here.
So
but what I love is that, you know, there are so many ways to fall in love with this game, as you and I can attest to for sure. And I'm sure as so many other people that you've had on can talk about. And I was talking to someone earlier about this. What I see as the future for whether it's women's hockey or women in sport in general is that we are truly limitless when it comes to what we deem and see as valuable storytelling in the space. And the way that you do that is by getting to know people, having conversations. So I think that that's absolutely critical and crucial, is just making space for each other. And like we say, that aspirational goal of hockey is for everyone. Then that means, you know, we can have people that come from deck hockey or ball hockey and then fall in love with ice hockey, or vice versa, or people who are passionate about baseball and find hockey when, you know, they're singing the blues because their team, the New York Metropolitans, once again did not make the playoffs. That's another part of my origin story too. Yeah, so I think it's just having those open dialogues, being like having our hearts on our sleeves, being energetic and passionate, while also being able to hold important space for conversations that move the sport forward.
I love that. I love that so much. So I don't know if you're going to answer this one because it's going to be a little bold, but I'm wondering if you'll make a prediction. What's the gold medal game look like, and who's taking home the gold?
Okay, off the bat, this is what I'll say. I feel confident that when we get to the gold medal game, there will be an amazing amount of WCHA representation.
You're so taking the easy way out, Erica.
No, I wanted to get that out there because it's true. That is, I can set my timer to that, which is such an important part of the women's game, which is also why I wanted to make sure I got that in there. Wow, this is such an interesting question. And I think there's so many different ways that we can look at it. The last quad or, you know, Olympic cycle has been compromised for so many different reasons on the women's side of things. World championships, you know, Four Nations, so many just different things at the professional level, at the college level, have been essentially interrupted for one reason or another. So my prediction is that we'll still see a pretty top heavy tournament where we usually have the United States, Canada, and then usually we have Finland in there, but they're going to be missing a pretty big piece in Noratsu, not with the team. So again, that's that storyline I'm definitely keeping an eye on. And then I think also you have some of these other federations, including China, we have to acknowledge, that have baked in a little bit more time together and have actually utilized a lot of the quarantining and COVID protocol to get some more time as a national team. So there's a little bit of an equalizer that's baked into this tournament just because of everything that's been happening. I think we still will see, again, the North American teams well represented. And then it becomes hard. Because if we go with the common practice and assumption that we're going to see those two in the gold medal game, I don't know that and this is the honest answer, I don't know that I've seen enough of either team, because I'm a big eye test person, to get a sense for how they're going to really finish out a tournament. And that's going to be critically important because of all of the ice time that has unfortunately had to been sacrificed. In talking with Sarah, I'll give you a little bit of a nugget here, but I mean, logistically, right? The Canadian team, they have about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops of time together. And then they go their separate ways because they want to make sure that they have as many players healthy ahead of the tournament as possible. And right now that's what it takes. So chemistry, building chemistry throughout the tournament, and the teams that are able to do that are going to be the most successful. I think it comes down to if the United States can kind of clean up some of what we've seen on the defensive side. I think they have really great athletes and some great defenders on the team, but a new head coach, obviously, and Coach Johnson and some other new elements on the defensive end. So that chemistry is going to be critical. The Canadian teams coming in with a different perspective. Didn't like what happened in 2018, were able to redeem themselves a little bit by hosting a adjusted multiple times over world championships. And you saw that it was their forward core that really led that group. And the defense was able to keep them in games, but the forwards were really the aggressor. And in my opinion, really were kind of the counter in that way. So I think that there's different things that both of these teams have to work on going ahead. And I don't know enough right now to know to give a really good assessment of who I think is going to take gold, but I still do think we see both of those teams in the gold medal game.
I think you just made some great points, though. Clearly the last 4 years have been a little bit of a roller coaster. And so I think this is the most unknown field in terms of, we haven't seen enough of any of these teams to really know what they're going to bring to the table. And there's just been enough changes too, with both with Team Canada and with Team USA, that, to play this out over a couple of weeks, and when it really does matter the most, will be really fun to see. So take the last couple seconds here to tell us again how best to follow you while you're in Beijing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you can follow me personally on social media. Should be able to be active there, not as much as usual, but at elindsay08. That's ELINDSAY08. And for coverage of the women's tournament, make sure you're following Bleacher Report. I'll be dispatching live from Beijing over there. And if you really want to follow the Canadian team through the eyes of Sarah Nurse, or the women's tournament through the eyes of Sarah Nurse, follow American Legacy Network.
Sarah Nurse, Wisconsin alum, WCHA alum. You should all tune in. Everyone should tune in to follow that journey. Erica, my friend, you're amazing. I cannot wait to follow along. I'm so thankful that our paths have crossed, and I just admire the heck out of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I hope this isn't the last of these conversations. We'll just leave it at that. How about that?
Hey, I love that. Thank you. And likewise, it's been such an honor to get to know you a little bit more, especially recently. And I would love to come back. We have so many things that we can get into.
So many things. I feel like this could be a weekly thing. We might be foreshadowing what's coming next.
I
Good
love
stuff. Well, for all of our viewers, as always, you can follow the WCHA on our social platforms. WCHA.com is our website. All of our games, we're now in, we've got just a couple weeks here left of the regular season. So all of our games are in league games, which means they're streaming live on B1G Plus, our great streaming partner. The Olympics are here. It's happening, and it's going to be an incredible couple of weeks of women's hockey. Thank you so much to our very special guest, Erica Ayala, and we wish you the safest of travels and can't wait to see how it plays out. Thank you again.
Thanks.